that I used to work out of.
Yeah, that's right. So Mike is, of course, our former dean, and for many years was my boss, and now I'm been very privileged to follow in his footsteps, and basically I have Mike's old job and Mike's old office, but it's a wonderful thing to welcome him back. So it's great to have him here.
Thank you, Nigel.
Great.
So, Cecile, how do you want to proceed? Oh, there's some.
Yes, I think we are going to start, and then I will be admitting people while they are arriving. Okay.
Okay.
So thank you very much to Nigel and Mike.
And there goes Mike's phone at just the wrong moment. So we'll just deal with that. And
it's okay.
We'll be right with you.
Okay. So thank you very much. This is our third coffee talk. So have a nice coffee, tea, or whatever you want, everyone.
I've got my coffee.
Yes. So we start working on this project with the scientific community members, and we really thank them for the help. The idea is to have another option and an opportunity to share about what business schools are facing, and to put really together our insights, our experience, and the innovation, the ideas we have all, and you especially from the business schools, to help the community, Eduniversal community, but globally the higher education community. And we are having each Tuesday this meeting focusing on one zone every week. So this week is about Oceania and especially Australia. But the idea is really to focus on the zone, but to share elements and experience that are helpful for everyone. So thank you to take time in preparing these sessions. I know you are going to have it like an interview. It's a great idea. So I will give you the floor, and thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Cecile.
Thank you, Cecile. Nigel, you were very kind in your remarks about me, but we should let the viewers know that in your time of leading the Curtin Business School, it's become a triple accredited business school, and it's also one that's gone through a period of significant challenge with respect to international borders. But perhaps we could begin by you telling us about the business school's international history. When did it all begin?
Well, thanks, Mike. A long time ago, and we're very proud of the history at Curtin Business School. Now, of course, international business education is normal. But back in the 1980s, which is even before Mike and I started at Curtin Business School, Curtin really was a pioneer. So in the 1980s, Curtin made what was then a very unusual move to start offering our undergraduate and later graduate business programs in Singapore. And we were one of the very first business schools to do that, and then expanded into other countries, Malaysia and so on. And we can see the legacy of that today. So Curtin actually has, as well as our main campus here in Perth, we also have 4 international campuses in Singapore, Malaysia, Mauritius, and Dubai. And business education is really the mainstay, or one of the principal areas of study in all of those campuses. But it really is a long history. So way back, we actually started with a partnership. We used to work with professional bodies. Way back we worked with the Marketing Institute of Singapore, which Mike will remember, and ran our programs in partnership with them before we had our own dedicated campus. But it really, Curtin has had a really long history of offering our programs internationally, and of course welcoming until very recently, for unfortunately obvious reasons, also a long history of welcoming many international students here to Perth.
And Nigel, when COVID struck, was there any state of preparedness? Was the school ready for anything like that?
Look, I can't say that we were ready or expecting something like COVID, because obviously none of us had any idea just how big an impact this was going to have, and also how long it would go on for. And unfortunately, this is far from over. We did, as you actually reminded me the other day, we did have a little bit of past experience, because back in 2003, there was the SARS epidemic, which was, of course, much smaller than COVID, but it was very, very serious. And it particularly impacted on Hong Kong. And we did have, back then, significant operations in Hong Kong. So we used to do a lot of teaching with a partner in Hong Kong. And of course, for a while there, just like we've experienced recently, the campus was closed, we couldn't travel there, we couldn't do the teaching trips. And in those early days, we really just started with learning management systems like Blackboard back then. And so then, as now, what the crisis did was to greatly accelerate innovation and the adoption of new techniques. So suddenly, whereas back then in the early 2000s, probably only some academics had their courses on Blackboard. Suddenly, everybody had to have their course on Blackboard, and it was done very quickly. And so we saw last year, and this isn't just unique to Curtin, of course, this is all universities, everybody had to move very quickly to get all their content and delivery online. But we did have the advantage. We certainly weren't new to online teaching. We'd done a lot of online teaching already. Our MBA, for example, has been available fully online for a long time, and other courses. But it was not universal. Not all of our courses had been available fully online, and obviously, just in common with every other business school, we had to move very, very quickly and get everything available via the internet in double quick time.
So, Nigel, then how did you approach it with students? Because I know you had students working for the Perth campus and from the other campuses, but you also have other partnerships within the Oceania region, where there must have been some challenges for the students as well as for the staff.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. Not just in the Oceania region, but all over Asia, and especially in China. So the crisis, as we all know, hit very quickly. And so obviously this is February, March of 2020. So there were quite a number of international students who were here in Perth at the time of the crisis. So they were fine up to a point, but of course it was very difficult. But for them, but they at least were here. The Australian government was moved to close borders very early, probably somewhat earlier than some other countries. And in particular, the Australian government made the decision quite early in the crisis to close our borders to China. So when that happened, that was a very, very significant development, of course. And it meant that very large numbers of our students could not return to Perth for the new semester, because we're operating, of course, on the Southern Hemisphere academic calendar. So our semester, we have two main semesters a year, which run from roughly August to November, and late February, early March through to June. So many, and of course, the crisis to compound things happened around the time of Chinese New Year. So many Chinese students were at home visiting their family. So we had a lot of students from all over the place, but a large number in China who were suddenly unable to come back to Perth. So we had to, as other universities did, of course, we had to move very quickly to offer fully online teaching to those students in China. And after a few teething problems, we worked out which VPN we needed to ensure some good connectivity. And there are some other complications as well. But after a week or two of working it out, it actually went remarkably well. And we had a very small dropout rate, that the vast majority of our students stayed with us and completed their studies. Of course, the next big challenge came, well, what about the next cohort of students? It's one thing to finish a course that you've already started, but what we didn't know was, would new students decide to start studying from home, fully online, not knowing when or if they would be able to come to Australia? And actually, a surprisingly large number did decide to start their studies fully online, studying from home, far more than I actually expected. Obviously, fewer than we would normally have. But, this would have been the middle of last year. And we were quite optimistic at that point that maybe by Christmas last year, surely by the start of 2021, students would be able to come back. We thought a year ago. Well, here we are in September. Australia is still closed, and there's really no end in sight. So it is a tough situation. There's no getting away from it.
So you said that the students who were already enrolled, most of them stayed the course.
Yep.
Was there any particular demand on the staff to keep them enrolled?
Very much so. So and this would be the same for many other universities as well. So really, we owe a huge debt of gratitude to the academic colleagues who responded magnificently in a crisis situation and are still doing it now. This is the thing. I mean, the initial urgency was one thing, but we still have colleagues who are working extra hours, going above and beyond the call of duty to look after the students, particularly those students who are what we call travel restricted international, those students who would be in Perth but are unable to come here. So they're in another country, they're in many different countries, but the largest number is in China. And so they are at home by and large, they're studying online. It's not what they were hoping for. It's not what they signed up for. They were hoping and expecting an international experience in Australia. So we can't exactly offer them that, but we can do our level best to offer them a really good academic experience at least, and to connect with them as much as we can. So our academic staff have continued to be really dedicated in making sure that they connect with those students regularly and just maintain those relationships, which are so important.
I'd like to come to the question of relationships. Connectivity was the practical side of things, making sure students and staff could get connected, and the commitment of the faculty and of the students to wanting to stay the course. So how important was this dimension of maintaining and establishing relationships?
Look, it's absolutely critical. I mean, everybody knows in businesses that relationships are key, but particularly in our part of the world and particularly in Asia, relationships are absolutely the bedrock of everything that we do. So we've got, and it goes back to your time as Dean, Mike, you helped to establish some of the relationships that we have with universities in various parts of the world, but a number of them are in China. And so some of those relationships are more than 15 years old. And every year, quite significant numbers of students come from those partners and join our programs in Perth. Now, we had a situation in the middle of last year, 2020, with one of our partners where, I did receive a very regretful note from the Dean, who said, look, we're really sorry, but the students have just decided that they're not comfortable about transferring to Curtin this year. And of course, by that, the dean meant to take up the opportunity to do a virtual course, because a virtual program, because we couldn't bring them into the country, but they weren't, even sure that they wanted to join us online. So, under the circumstances, I completely understood that, but we didn't give up, and we set up a webinar, and one of my colleagues in the business school, academic colleagues, who is originally Chinese, obviously speaks the language, played a prominent part in that webinar, and other colleagues took part. We talked to the parents, to the students, to academic colleagues in the partner institution, and remarkably, we turned that around, and from none of the students saying that they would do the program, they all changed their minds, and they all ended up doing the program. I'm sorry that it ended up being online for the entire year. We didn't know that at the time, but they did stick with us. But it was because of the pre-existing relationship, and because we really worked at maintaining that relationship in difficult circumstances.
Most Australian business schools have evaluation systems to see how the staff are performing and how the students are performing. Did you do anything to see how the students were taking the online learning, Nigel?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So like every university, we have the usual student satisfaction surveys at the end of the semester, but that's not really enough in these circumstances. So in normal times, we have, for example, what we call student consultative committees, which have student representatives from all the various programs. They meet regularly, are communicated with regularly, and so we get feedback in real time, so to speak, which is fed back to the academic areas, so that we can make rapid adjustments if something needs to be done. And of course, that mechanism was particularly, or has been particularly critical over the past 18 or so months, where we've had to do a lot of things quickly. We've had to try new things, so being in a position to get quick feedback and being able to make rapid changes as a result of that feedback has been very important.
What were some of the most important things the students raised, Nigel?
Look, I think it is so inevitably there are always technical issues, and there are connectivity issues, and sometimes there are things that can be done, but sometimes it might be an issue at students' end, so to speak, and it's a little bit difficult to resolve that directly. But I think really being connected to the Curtin community, to other students, and to the academics is really important. So yeah, sure, you can. It's easy enough to make the academic materials available online, and obviously that's the foundation. But to try and improve the experience of the students under these circumstances, you need to do a lot more than that. And it really is about trying everything possible to keep that personal connection, so that the academics checking in with the students, and also creating opportunities for the students to interact with each other. So we've got, so we've been very, very lucky, just to give you some context. Here in Perth, where Mike and I are sitting, in Western Australia, with a few minor exceptions throughout this whole period, Perth has been pretty much COVID-free. So we've had virtually, no restrictions. We went back to teaching on campus in the middle of last year. We've been very fortunate. That's been achieved, however, being very strict borders, and doesn't just mean that people from other countries can't come here. Right now, people from Sydney and Melbourne can't come to Perth. You would never that 2 years ago, you just wouldn't have believed anybody that would have told you that was the situation. Anyway, it is. So we're pretty cut off. But what we've been doing, so for example, using the Blackboard, for example, the learning management system, creating student groups, but not just having a discussion group for students in China and a discussion group for students in face-to-face students in Perth. No, mixing them up, so that the students who are in their own country, who are studying online and unable to come here, they can actually interact with students who are doing their regular classes face-to-face here in Perth, and it's not quite the same, of course, but at least it's something. We can at least do something to connect those online students with the students who are studying face-to-face here on campus.
The business school is a comprehensive business school that offers undergraduate programs, masters by research, and DBAs and PhDs.
Yeah.
How were the research students or the taught master students, both of them affected by COVID, just in case any of the people watching in have had to deal with some of those issues?
So taught masters, very similar to coursework masters, very, very similar to what I've already said. In fact, apart from, so our MBA primarily attracts domestic students, but so that's carried on pretty much as normal. Our specialist masters programs attract a lot of international students, and so those students have been very much impacted by what's happened, and so really what I've said previously applies to that group. With research students, it's a little bit easier in a way, because we do have a lot of international research students, but they tend to, when they're doing their PhDs, they probably don't go back quite as often as a generalization. They tend to be here in Perth for quite a few years at a time. So many of them were here, so that there were probably a lesser, when the crisis hit, so there were probably a lesser number that were unable to return. And given the nature of PhD, once you've done any initial research methodology coursework, the PhD here the model is very much you do an individual thesis under the supervision of an academic, and that is relatively straightforward to do via Zoom or whatever electronic platform you use. So there are some PhD students who are in Saudi Arabia and other places who haven't been able to come back, but they can carry on in a more normal way. And of course, most of the articles and library resources are all available online. So it's not, I'm sure they prefer to be here in Perth, but it's not, they're probably slightly less impacted in some ways than the coursework students.
The impact on universities is important to consider as well, Nigel. People might not know that Australian students pay for their education now, either by loan or front up, and so do international students. Mm-hmm. Has there been any discernible impact on revenue and that life?
Yes, Mike, there has been a discernible impact
that was
on
the
revenue.
easiest question of the day.
Yeah, look, I mean, we're fortunate. Curtin University is in a strong position, and it's got strong reserves. And actually, a big reason for that is goes back to the history that I talked about right at the beginning, because over many years, we've been successful, and we've been able to look after our resources carefully. So we have built up some reserves, and so when tough times come along, that's pretty important to have those reserves. So, But, you know, having said that, yeah, of course it has an impact. You know, close to, before the crisis, I mean, close to 30% of our students are international, what we call international onshore students. So there are considerably fewer today than there were in 2 years ago. And unfortunately, you know, next year, I think for us here in Australia is certainly the first half of next year is, you know, not looking great from that perspective. So of course, it has an impact. One advantage that Curtin does have is that we do have our international campuses. As I mentioned at the beginning, we've got 4 international campuses. Now, each one of those is in a different situation with regard to COVID. Malaysia, it's been very tough. They've been closed down. I think they reopened for about a week and then had to close down again. So that campus has been pretty much closed right from the beginning of the crisis until now. So it's just been online learning that entire time. Some of the other campuses, of course, they've been closed for lengthy periods, but they've fared slightly better. But we have managed to maintain numbers in those campuses. Now, before the crisis, all up, Curtin probably had, of all our international students, probably roughly 50% were here in Perth, studying here in Perth, and 50% were studying at one of our international campuses. Now, in the last 18 months, that ratio has tipped slightly, and we now have a greater percentage of our international students are actually studying now in one of our offshore campuses than are studying here in Perth. So, you know, having those international campuses, whilst they too have you know, gone through very, very challenging times, you know, I think it's been very helpful to us that we had those campuses.
We've been talking about the Curtin Business School on the west coast of the country.
Yeah.
Do you think the experience here is mirrored in other parts of Australia?
I think, to be honest, in some places even more so. So in some of the well-known cities of Australia, in the eastern part of Australia, so in Sydney, in Melbourne, in Brisbane, there was, you know, even more international students than here in Perth. In fact, prior to COVID, I was a little bit dissatisfied with with our share of international students, and I was doing everything I could to increase it. Anyway, best laid plans and all that. Yeah, look, some of and it's been well reported in the media, but some of the large, well-known universities in the east of Australia have taken a very big hit in terms of revenues. It does, especially, it disproportionately affects business. Just to put this in proportion, prior to the crisis, I'm not sure what the figures are just right now, but prior to the crisis, of all the international tertiary students in Australia, about 50% studied business. So business is the big area of interest in Australia for international students. So business schools have been affected. I think everybody has had to make cuts. We unfortunately had to go through a program late last year, which was very painful, where we had to reduce costs, and some people had to be let go, which is a very painful thing to go through. But some other universities have had it worse, and from what I read in the media, some are facing a second round of cuts. So yeah, look, it is what it is. Certainly there has been a significant impact, but we will come back.
That's encouraging to hear. I suppose the Australian universities, given the borders are closed, are probably losing students to other jurisdictions like the Canadians or the Americans or the English, the French, where students who might have come here are maybe attracted to places where the borders are more open.
Yeah, I think to speak candidly, I would love to see a bit more recognition from our governments in Australia of the importance of international education. I think I do understand the imperative of governments has been to protect the health of the population. Of course, I understand that, and that is a paramount consideration. But particularly now, different situation last year, but particularly now, we continue to be closed, and other countries that compete with Australia for international students, including the ones that you've mentioned, are very welcoming to international students. And yeah, no question in my mind that puts Australia and New Zealand at a disadvantage, and it's a shame because I mean, it's not what when we go through accreditation processes, we talk about our internationalisation, and we're really proud of our internationalisation, and there are many ways that can be achieved. But there's no doubt that having a good number of students from all over the world here on campus really injects something very important into the life of the campus. It enriches the educational experience for everybody. And if that's somewhat diminished, it's a shame. We want it to come back as quickly as possible, and to go back to having the most diverse, internationalized campus that we can possibly have.
Nigel, I don't know about the viewers, but I'm very impressed with the emphasis on students that the school has. You are able to respond quickly and appropriately and urgently with a high level of commitment and connectivity. You used student surveys to solve problems on the run. That must give you some confidence in the future when the boundaries open up, that the future does hold the promise that the relationships will bear fruit.
Absolutely. So obviously we hope that by maintaining the quality, by maintaining the relationships, you maintain the trust of students and partners and parents and other important stakeholders, so that when eventually our government chooses to allow the country to reopen, we will be able to get back to normal operations fairly quickly, but it will take time. We have to be realistic.
The effort that's been put on so far, as I understand it, is being done by the individual staff, not by a public relations section.
Oh no! This is very much the. I mean, obviously, university marketing plays an important role in getting messages out to all our stakeholders and audiences about what the university is doing. But no, they don't. They don't really communicate directly with students. That's very much the role of the academic staff.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I could just offer you people watching a little summary. So far, Nigel talked about the commitment of staff and the connection to the students, the need to make sure connectivity was good and strong, the preparedness of staff to work above and beyond the call, the fact that the university, the business school, had already done some preparation for online teaching, just in the course of normal developments in pedagogy, that this was happening and we needed to connect it and use it. And that the impact on students has been serious, but because of the efforts of the school, they've been kept. The benefits, I think, have been, and the financial benefits have been the university is in a sound position, so we've perhaps been able to use that to keep in contact. And it's not only been through the 4 campuses you have offshore, but through individual partnerships in other parts of the region.
Yeah.
And I'm interested as well that some of the graduate students have maybe suffered a bit more than others, but others have not. That's a good thing. And the competitive nature of schools. Maybe we've talked about the international competitors, the other larger countries, but what about within Australia? That some of the eastern states universities have lost more students. Do you anticipate any attempt by them to recover that might affect Curtin's numbers?
Oh, well, not maybe a little bit, but Australia is a little different. I mean, you know, I grew up, I've been here 30 odd years, but I grew up in England. And certainly when I was 18, my only goal was to leave home and go away to university to another city, because I thought that would be much more fun. And I was quite surprised when I came to Australia that it doesn't work that way. I think it's partly because the distances between the major cities are so huge. So people, and so I, you know, from my own two daughters who are well in their late 20s now, have obviously gone through university. You know, they both went to university here in Perth, and so it's quite usual to for young people in Australia to stay in their home city to go to university, not necessarily to go to another city. So yeah, there's always a minority of students who might be attracted to go to another state. But it is a minority. I have to say there are 5 universities here in Perth. We're the biggest, and sure, there's always been healthy competition between the 5 universities, and yeah, I'd say that competition is probably heated up a bit. I think that's fair comment, given that there's a big restriction on the availability of new international students unless they want to study online. So yeah, everybody's even keener than usual, shall we say, to attract domestic students, yes, local students.
All of that's part of the vibrancy, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Combination of international and local
yeah,
students.
Yeah.
Pardon me. Nigel, one of the other attributes, I think, of the school is its triple accreditation.
Mm-hmm.
You've been through a couple of accreditation processes recently. How have the accrediting bodies viewed online education internationally? I assume they've spoken to you about that and asked you what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So we, as Mike says, so we have AACSB 5-year accreditation, and we also have an EFMD accredited MBA. And I think it's very important to have that separate accreditation for the MBA. Yeah, so in fact, we've been through 3 virtual, they all came at once. We've been through 3 virtual online peer review visits in the last 9 months. So it's been quite intense. The third of them is now over. So that's a breathe a sigh of relief. But yes, certainly all of those, and anyone else who's been through an accreditation visit recently will know that in addition to all the normal documentation and self-evaluation report or self-assessment report, depending on which accreditation it is, you're asked to produce a COVID appendix. So you have to produce a dedicated report on how you responded to the crisis and what you're doing and how you're looking after your students who are unable to be with you in person. So yeah, that was a very important factor, and EFMD Equus in particular, as everybody knows, placed particular emphasis on internationalisation. So yeah, absolutely, they were very, very interested in all the things that we've been doing, some of which I've been talking about in the last 40 minutes or so.
Cecile, just before we hand it over to you and all the visitors online, it might be worth just letting people know something about distance. If you're going to travel from Perth to Singapore, it takes you about as long to travel to Sydney by air. If you're traveling to Hong Kong, it's about 8 hours. If you're traveling to Beijing, it's perhaps closer to 10. And if you wanted a direct flight, as you can get them in these super aeroplanes, from Perth to London, it's more like 17 hours. So I assume it'll be about the same to Paris. A little longer to get to the US because you can cross the international date line and find out you're in yesterday. So we're Nigel in particular, are open to anything you would like to do now.
Absolutely. Is there any questions or comments or observations?
Do we have some questions?
I don't have yet any questions from the audience, but I have one.
Thank you, Luba.
Thank you very much for this interesting interview. And I have one question to both of you. What do you think, how do you plan, and if you plan, I hope so, to manage internalization in a post-COVID crisis, in a post-COVID world? How do you plan to manage internalization at Curtin?
So look, this is absolutely something that we're actively working on at the moment. I mean, the short-term, even medium-term planning is, I have to say, it is quite difficult at the moment because the situation keeps changing, and the timeline for things even beginning to get back to normal keep being extended. So a year ago we were saying, it might be a year before international arrivals are allowed again, and here we are still saying, well, it's probably going to be another year. So I just haven't got a crystal ball, and so we just don't know when international travel to and from Australia is going to resume. But I think we have to be realistic for us, especially here in Perth, because our state government is particularly strict on the borders. Certainly the first half of next year, no. If we're very fortunate, we might start to reopen in the second half of next year to international students, but things are probably not going to really start getting back to normal until 2023, which is quite something. So we obviously have to accept that in terms of our international numbers, that there's going to be a bit of a rebuilding. It's not just going to go back to the way it was immediately. It's going to take time, but we will continue. I mean, there are some bright pieces of news on the horizon. So in terms of our partnerships in China, for example, as people who have similar arrangements will know, I mean, how that works is generally that cohorts of students sign up to pretty much the Curtin program from the start, and then they do 2 to 3 years in China, and then they transfer to us for the remainder of their studies. And I just had an email this week, actually, that more than 100 students have just been recruited into the Curtin cohort at one of our partner universities in China, in southern China. So, obviously they're not going to, they couldn't come anyway, even in normal times, they wouldn't be coming for 2 or 3 years. But that's tremendous vote of confidence. On Thursday, actually, I'll be not on Zoom. Actually, I'll be on a new platform which I've just found out about today, which is a 10-cent platform. So I have to install it on my computer, and I'll be talking to a group. I've been asked to give a welcome speech by online to commencing students at another. This is actually a brand new partner of ours, again in southern China, and I think they've recruited 25 students into the Curtin program. So I'll actually be talking to them on Thursday afternoon, and hopefully they will be able to join us in 2 or 3 years' time. So look, we just keep going, and we have we're a large university, a large business school. We have a very high number of domestic students, but yeah, we're running. It's likely that we'll be running with slightly lower than normal numbers for a year or two. But internationalisation, it's really in our DNA. It's been a huge part of Curtin Business School, as I said, for decades, and we've no intention of changing in that regard.
If I could just add to what Nigel has said, Luba, I think Nigel has pointed already to the importance of networks that the business school has worked with and worked in. I also think he's pointed to some strengths that should stay: the good connectivity for online work, very good pedagogy and commitment by the faculty to doing the work, and the evaluation systems showing commitment by the students to the way they're being taught. And they seem to me to be three quite important ingredients that you hope would weather any storm.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your comments. Do you have any other questions, or maybe someone wants to share with us their...
Yeah, I'd love to hear experiences from other people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
we have
perhaps.
Here people from different countries.
Or perhaps ask what you are expecting from the Australian business schools, or what your students are expecting from Australia, or feel free. I have a question if nobody has for the moment. I have many, but the priorities that the attendees share with you. But one I can make now is: are you now in process, or have you create new programs, new curricula, new programs, new diplomas, especially concerning the situation, to face this current situation, but also to anticipate about the future needs, and you've been talking about the new perhaps business models you have to build. So how are you in process with that?
So that's a great question. So we were actually doing a lot of that before the crisis. So we've recently had, over the last 2 or 3 years, we've had a really major program of reinventing almost, certainly greatly reconfiguring both our undergraduate and our master's studies. And so particularly at the, Mike will remember, at the undergraduate level, we have a 3-year undergraduate degree, and 1 year of that is pretty much the same for everybody. We call it we used to call it the Common Core. We call it the Business Core now, which, whether you're studying marketing or finance or accounting, everybody does those foundation subjects. And it was a big job. We completely reconfigured that. We wanted to break down the disciplinary silos. So we used to have one course in marketing and one course in economics and one course in accounting, and we've totally transformed that now. So we've got cross-disciplinary courses. We've got a data analytics course. We've got a course which I'm particularly excited about called Strategic Career Design, where the students really become self-reflective and think about what they want to achieve with their career right from the start. And then there are various activities that go right through the rest of their studies. We've introduced a brand new capstone experience. So that was happening anyway. I have to say it was obviously not planned this way, but we launched that new business core in 2020. So it's a difficult thing to change anyway, but to launch a change of that magnitude in the middle of a global pandemic was not perfect timing, but anyway, it all happened and it went fine. So there's that. But yeah, new business models. So the other thing we pride ourselves on at Curtin is being very connected to industry, and we'd really executive education program or strategy really about 2 or 3 years ago. And what so in terms of new business models, we've created, in Australia, we have something called graduate certificates, which are like the first 6 months of a master's degree. And so what we've done is created something we call the Graduate Certificate in Business Futures. And it's very flexible, so it's customizable. And we've designed it with a view to creating bespoke programs for companies. So we've got one about to start with a big company here. We're actually going to have a launch of it quite soon. And if you like, it's an in-house award program for executives from that company. And I'm very excited about that. So we've got one course. They do four courses. One is tailor-made for them. The executives will be able to choose from some MBA type units, and then we offer a number of shorter courses as well. From one day to several day courses, and the fourth quarter of the program can be made up from a selection of those shorter courses. So I think that's very exciting, because I think there'll always be a market for the MBA, although it's a very mature market. It's not a high growth market, but MBA will always be really important to a business school. But I think the domestic postgraduate market is changing. I think those people want different things. I think there's less interest in doing the traditional specialized master's course that takes, unless you need it for accreditation, which outside of accounting is not that common. And most of the accountants have done undergraduate anyway. So I think people are looking for just-in-time learning, shorter courses, much greater flexibility. They want learning on their terms. And so it means that business schools have got to be a lot more innovative and agile. And that's what we're trying to do. So yeah, the new business model is very important.
Okay, thank you. We will have next week the coffee talk. It's about new business models.
Great.
By Sherif Kamel. He will take examples from Africa, because there is a lot of innovation there and a lot of things happening, but it's open to the world, so it's really global.
Good.
One question, I think we have one.
Yeah, we have another question from Nishit Jain. Nishit, you can.
Oh, hello, Nishit. How are you?
Nishit,
face.
India.
Very well. Nice to see you.
We normally meet at conferences, but
indeed,
not
indeed. It's been fairly, hard, I believe, for traveling for everyone.
Impossible.
I guess you are really locked in a space which is hard to imagine. From what I read.
Yeah, we can't leave Western Australia. So I can see your question, Nishit. Will you invest less in future on travel and connecting more through digital technology for faculty and student mobility? Please explain why. Or will you make mobility optional? That's your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because great. I feel for us, mobility is one of the ways of learning. More than the courses or the faculty per se.
Okay, so it's a great, and somebody has said very interesting question. I agree, it's a fantastic question. So look, you know, I do believe, call me old-fashioned, but, you know, I do believe travel will continue to be important. And but we have learned that a lot is possible through online communication. You know, I've mentioned accreditation, and so we've hosted 3 online accreditation visits in the last 9 months. I've also been now on a few online accreditation peer review teams, and actually it's okay. You know, it's not as fun as visiting the place, but it's quite doable. And so especially, you know, I think that maybe not every accreditation visit in future needs to be face-to-face. Is purely my personal view. I mean, especially for us in Australia, bringing a peer review team over here is very expensive. I mean, it's seriously expensive. And you know, climate change, we're putting people on aeroplanes, flying them from Europe or America to Australia for 3 days. It's kind of a bit crazy. So, you know, I think we can, you know, maybe cut down on unnecessary travel. But you know, when we do travel, really, you know, make it worthwhile and make it count. Students, we will always want students to have mobility and to travel, because it's such an informative experience for students to travel. Having said that, though, we've experimented with virtual study tours, and you know, you can do something. You can connect people. We've done virtual study tours with our other campuses, and you know, it's a substitute. It's not the same, but you can create something worthwhile. So look. Absolutely, we all want travel to come back, but I think the world has changed, and it won't go back to exactly how it was before, and probably that's a good thing, you know.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, if I may I add something before we leave? Hello, everyone. Thank you for this very interesting presentation. I wanted to share my experience regarding hybrid and twinning delivery courses, because originally I was thinking like, you know, it's not really a nice option and not really worth it, and maybe not a nice experience for students. And now I changed my mind. We organized short-term programs hybrid online. It was pretty good. We had 10 times more students than usually when it was presential. I think it was a nice option for some students who are not able to, maybe they don't have time or they don't have the money to pay for the travel and all these costs, you know, that they would need to pay for if they would be traveling. And regarding the courses, regular courses, we did twinning delivery courses, meaning in the classroom, and as well for students from home being connected at the same time, so with interaction.
Hybrid,
it was very difficult for the professors at the beginning. But at the end, for the students, and especially for international students, it was a very nice option. And this year we kept it for the full academic year, and it was very interesting for late arrival students. We also have students studying fully online. So finally I changed my mind. I was a little bit, I guess, old-fashioned as well, and thought, you know, presential was the very best options. But at the end, I think for specific needs, specific targets, it can be a nice option. And same for the staff and for the meeting. Of course, we miss meeting people face-to-face, and sometimes it's more effective, especially when you're trying to negotiate new partnerships, new projects. It's much better if you see people, but it works. It works. And we did amazing things and meet and greet meetings online with many partners attending, partner days online, and it was fun. You know, we had games online. So yeah, time is changing, and, you know, maybe I don't know what's going to be the future for us, but I think we need to adapt, and we have new markets, of course, and new business model in front of us. Yeah, so I fully agree with that. A nice option as well to have offshore campuses. That's the case for EM Normandy, and we have campuses in Oxford and Dublin, and in the future Dubai, and it was really great for us during the crisis, because it was an opportunity for our outgoing students that, you know, they were not able sometimes to go by partners, and they were able to go and to do this mobility with us on our campuses. So it was great as well. So I just wanted to share this experience. Thank you for all this interesting presentation. Thanks a lot.
Lawrence,
Thank you, Laurence.
I mean, with your permission of the moderator, if I can just, I mean, ask, I was a little curious because you said it very rightly, but since we are all in the business of business education, I think it has an impact which would be there on the students' tuition fee, because often the pricing of digital is assumed to be lower than the real price, and none of the schools are, you know, going that route. So, I mean, how do you overcome such a cultural mind shift, you know, because people are paying not just for online, I mean, and the second thing, they want to choose a country. I mean, I like London, I want to be there. I like Sydney, I want to be there, you know. I mean, it's not just choosing a university alone. I mean, otherwise everybody may flock to Harvard for that matter. I mean, who knows? So.
Okay, thanks. So I'll try to answer both your questions. I'd just like to thank Laurence, is it? So we have a partnership with EM Normandy, which we're very proud of, and so great to
thank you.
And that came about through a face-to-face you know, discussion at a conference. So yeah, anyway, so hopefully we'll renew that partnership, you know, and collaboration soon. Yeah, Nishit, look, pricing it can be a bit of a sensitive issue. Look, the official line is that the educational experience, or the educational outcome of online is every bit as good as face to face, and I think you can justifiably make that argument that if you look at, okay, what are the learning outcomes of the program? Can you achieve those as readily online as face-to-face? Actually, the answer is probably yes. However, there is a whole lot more to university life than learning outcomes. We all know this. And particularly if you're an international student, you know, I agree with you 100%. You want to have an experience of Perth or of Sydney or of London or New York or wherever it is you want to go. And you don't get that sitting in your kitchen at home, you know, bent over a laptop. And, you know, you may as well pick, as you say, well, why do the Perth course? You may as well do the Harvard course if you're going to do something online. So look, I think, I'll be a little bit circumspect in what I say, but the advertised price isn't always the price that's actually paid. I think you'll find that in the university world we're very polite and we talk about scholarships. In the business world, people talk about discounts, but I think you'll find that there is a range of pricing possibilities that reflect the reality of what you've just said.
Sure.
And I have a question connected with that. Have you already, for those who have graduated but have never been on the campus, do you start planning something for them? Or, what do you think about that?
Well, actually, on Sunday, I was at a graduation ceremony, and you know, it was a you know, there were quite a few students who couldn't be there to get their degree. They couldn't walk across the stage and have their hand shaken by the Chancellor of the university and get dressed up and handed their award. So we actually integrated virtual graduation with real life graduation. So the name would be read out, and then the person's professional photograph of the person would appear with their name on the screen and what they, what degree they'd obtained, and they got their round of applause. And of course, they were able to, they were watching the ceremony from online, and the people speaking at the graduation particularly welcomed those in the audience who were online as well. So it was we had a hybrid graduation ceremony, and I actually I completely agree with Laurence. I think hybrid is tough for the academics at the beginning, and you've got to have the right technology. But I really think that's a big part of the future, and not only because of COVID, also because of people's lifestyles. Because people don't want to come to class all the time, or they're working remotely and they want to join the class as and when it suits them, and not necessarily come in every week, at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning or whatever it is. So that is a big part of the future. Look, I think we would love to, we're another thing we're working on at the moment is relaunching our alumni, and we have a very large number of international, relaunching our alumni association, and we have a very large number of international alumni, some of whom will have graduated quite recently and may not have had the opportunity to come to Perth. So yeah, we'd love to create some opportunities for them to get here. As I say, regrettably, we're looking at, I think, at least another year before that realistically is going to be possible.
Okay.
I have a last question, if I may.
Okay, sure.
So how Curtin Business School is competing with other countries that can welcome physically international students? So you mentioned that international students is an important part of your recruitment. And now that Australia has again closed the borders, how do you compete to, enroll these international students versus the countries that can welcome them physically on their campus?
Sure. Well, look, thanks for the question. I mean, I touched on this previously. It's not easy, frankly. So all we can do is keep working hard, keep maintaining those relationships, make sure that we have very good quality, the best quality experience that we can manage for our students who are studying online. And in due course, when we're allowed to welcome the students back, obviously redouble our marketing and communication efforts. But yeah, look, of course I'm concerned about that, because as we've said, well-known countries that compete with us, the UK, Canada, United States, especially now Trump has gone, the United States is looking a lot more attractive to people. Sure, they're open and we're not. It's pretty, it's quite black and white, straightforward. So, but we live in the world that we live in, not the world that we want, and we just have to make the best of it.
Thank you.
But Australia is a very attractive destination for
yes,
students, and it will continue to be so. And this won't go on forever. It will end. It's just gone on a bit longer than we expected.
We expect that governments will help when they decide to open the doors. They will also help universities, because Australia is really attractive, but it's quite complicated to get the visa and so on. So hopefully it will be easy at the beginning to help you to make it and make it easy for all the universities and schools.
It would be good. We would love our government to be really supportive. So if you could just drop a line to our Prime Minister and let him know, that would be great.
Okay. So do you have other comments, other questions? Don't hesitate. We can take a few minutes if you want. I don't think so.
No, thank you.
Thank you all for this dynamic discussion. This is really the purpose, and so this coffee talk was really as we want these kind of sessions to be really sharing moments and sharing experience and insights and ideas. And thank you for the diversity of the panel represented from many places in the world. Hopefully it will be useful for all of you. So have a nice day. Here in France, the day is quite beginning. So have a nice moment and take care. And see you soon. So as you know, this kind of meetings is a weekly meeting. So we will have the opportunity to meet together in 7 days and talk about new business models with Sherif Kamel and some schools examples from Africa, but also from other countries. So feel free to come back for just a few minutes or the whole moment if you can, and have a great day. And if you have some ideas, if you want us to organize a coffee talk about some topic, if you have some suggestions, if you want to be part of it, don't hesitate. You can contact Marie-Jo Luba or I, and we will do our best to manage this.
And could I just shout out to Sarah? Thank you very much for that message you just put on the chat. Sarah from University of Ljubljana. I'm proud to say another of our partners. And please send my greetings back to your dean. Metka is, I've just been on a peer review team for a week, which Metka chaired. So I've seen a lot of Metka on Zoom over the last week. She was a fantastic chair, by the way. Really, really great.
Thank you. I will tell her.
Thank you, Sarah. Big hugs to Metka and to your team. We miss you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you again, Mike and Nigel, for your time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Hello, Diana.
Hello, Diana as well.
Nice to see you.
Hello, Laurent.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Elena. See you soon.
See you soon.
See you, Laurence.
Yeah, good to see you, everybody. Yeah, see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bonne journée.
Bye-bye.
Luba.